Hello, everybody, and welcome to day one in this new series, Chess Beginner to Winner, in which I try to help take the guesswork out of figuring out what to do, how to start out when you first learn how to play chess. So I apologize to viewers and subscribers who are already experienced and you're not absolute beginners. But as I go along in this series, I'll gradually work up to more complicated, chess strategy and tactics and stuff that will help more experienced players as well. But I received some requests on, making videos for absolute beginners and then working up from there. So that's what I'm going to try and do here. So this video is just about how to set up the chessboard and how the pieces move. So I'll begin with that, and then I'll slowly progress to more complicated and difficult material as we go along. But for day one, I'll show you how to set up the chessboard and move the pieces. So the first thing you want to do when setting up a chessboard is to have the white square in the bottom right hand corner. So imagine I'm sitting at the bottom of the screen here on one side of the board and my opponent's at the top of the screen on the other side. And this goes for sitting at a table with an actual chessboard. You want the white corner, the white square on the bottom right here. So if you just remember white on your right, you'll be able to remember to put the white square or light colored square down here in the bottom right, and it'll be the same for your opponent. It will be on the right hand side. And the reason you do this will become apparent as we place the pieces on the board later. Because if you do not have this square in the right area, then the pieces will be set up a little wrong and it can cause problems. And also, you may be wondering, well, what are these letters and numbers on the board? Well, that I'll cover more in future videos, but these letters and numbers help you annotate your games. You can write your moves down, and this is usually required in tournaments, unless it's a blitz game or a quicker time control. But the letters will be on the bottom. So if this is the white side of the board here on the bottom of the screen, you want the letters to go in order, from A to H here. And they'll be backwards when the black side sits down in front of the board. But for the white hand side, you want the left corner to start with A1, and then B1, C1, and all the way across. And that way you can tell that the letters and numbers are situated correctly, because if you don't do that, when it comes time to write your moves down, it will throw off your annotation. So just remember, light square on the bottom right, and if this is the white side of the board, the letters should progress normally from left to right, A, B, C, D, and then upwards from 1, 2, 3, up to 8. So if we look at the rows of squares, horizontally, these will be the ranks. So the bottom rank is from A1 to H1. The second rank is from A2 to H2, and so on. And then from top to bottom, it will be files. So the A file from A1 to A8, the B file from B1 to B8, and so on. So if you hear the term ranks in chess, it's kind of like the stripes, the horizontal stripes on the sleeve of a military member. So horizontally are ranks, and vertically up and down are the files, like a file cabinet. So each one of these squares going up could be the drawers of a file cabinet. All right, anyway, before I get into that too much, light square on the right, make sure the annotation for the white side has A1 in the corner on the bottom left. And now I'll show you how to place the pieces. So in chess, you want on the second rank here to all be pawns on both sides here. So on white's second rank and black's second rank, you'll just have pawns. So that's easy enough to remember. And then in the corners, you'll put your rooks, sometimes referred to as castles, but in chess we call those rooks. And then beside the rooks, you will have the knights, or as some children like to call them, the horses. But knights beside your rooks on both sides. And then beside the knights, we'll have your bishops. And then in the center, and this is important, so in the center, you will place your king and your queen. Now, one way to make sure that you have the pieces set up correctly is to place the queen on her color. So the black queen on the dark squares and the white queen on the light squares. Or you could say her dress matches her shoes. So the black or darker colored queen, if you're playing with chess pieces that are not black and white, the darker queen will be on the dark squares, and the light queen will be on the light squares. And then you just place the king beside the queen. So just remember, place your pawns on the second rank on both sides of the board, rooks in the corners, followed by the knights beside them, then the bishops, then the queen on her color square. So dark queen on the dark square, light queen on the light square, and the kings beside them. All right, so this is how you would start a game of chess with the board set up with a light square on your right, bottom right-hand corner here for both players. Then you would make sure, if you're using the letters and numbers for annotation, have A1 in the bottom left corner, and then make sure the numbers progress from the bottom, up to the top here. And now you're ready to play a game of chess. But you may not know how the pieces move. So I'll quickly show you how the pieces can be moved. So if we look at the pawns first, the pawns can move one square or two on their first move. So I could move this pawn, let's see here. I'll load this up like we're playing an actual game. So the pawns can move one square or two forward on their first move. So let's say we jump out 2, and then our opponent just jumps out 1. Now after this, we can only move those pawns one square at a time. And the pawns always move forward unless they are capturing. Then they only capture one square diagonally. So we'll just continue on. Let's say white moves another pawn out 2, and now black decides to move out 2 as well. Well, now white's pawn has the option of capturing. So white, if he wants to move this pawn, he could move forward one square, or he could capture diagonally. So pawns always capture diagonally. So now it's black's turn to move. He can capture diagonally. And the pieces are even. So now that you know how to move the pawns, you can move them 1 square forward or 2 on their first move. After that, they can only move 1 square forward at a time. And when they capture, they can only capture diagonally 1 square, as we saw here if we go back and take another look at it. So white captures, and then black captures diagonally 1 square. All right, now we'll take a look at some of the other pieces here. Let's take a look at how the bishops move. All right, so bishops, as you notice, one is on the light squares and one is on the dark squares, and they will always remain on that square, or excuse me, that color of squares, and they move diagonally. Kind of like how the pawns just capture diagonally 1 square. Well, the bishops can go as far as they want diagonally until they are blocked by a piece or they capture a piece. So this bishop could move diagonally. So let's say he moves up here to d3. And the bishop could have moved further, but if he moved to c4, the pawn could have captured diagonally. Or if he moved here, that's an option as well. So bishops move diagonally in any direction. So let's say black does the same and moves his bishop out. Or if the bishop moves here, well, white could move the pawn up 1, attacking the bishop. And the bishop is a stronger piece than the pawn, so the bishop would probably retreat here to avoid being captured. All right, so now you know how the bishops move. They move diagonally until they capture something or they are blocked by a piece. So next we'll take a look at the knights. Now the knights are a little more confusing because they move in an L shape and they're the only piece that can jump over other pieces. So white, it's his turn here and he wants to move this knight. So the knight can move in this L-shaped move up here from G1 up to the F3 square. So we see that the knight also started on a dark square and jumped to a light square. So the knight, when it moves, it will always jump from one color square to the opposite colored square. And it will move in an L shape. So if we go back, this knight moving in an L shape could jump up to H3 on this light square, or to F3 where we ended up moving it, or it could even jump to E2 here from the dark square to the light square. So we move that knight up here. Now perhaps black would do the same, jumping his knight forward. And the chess pieces, when they capture a piece, it's not like checkers where they jump over a piece and take it. They must land on the square of the piece they capture to be able to capture something. So now we'll take a look at, let's say, the queen. Well, one thing, before I show you how the queen moves, I'll show you how the rooks move. So the rooks move in a straight line in any direction. So a lot of beginners will try and play something like this pawn move here, and then push their rooks forward, up, and then over to try and get some type of attack going. But that can backfire. So let's say black just moves another piece, and then white performs this rook maneuver, jumping the rook up. Well, now the bishop could capture that rook. And then the knight could move up and recapture. So just remember, the rooks move in a straight line as far as they can before they either capture a piece or are blocked by another piece. But forward, backwards, left, or right, always in a straight line is how the rooks move. And then now we can see how the queens move. So the queens are kind of like a combination of the bishops and the rooks. They move either diagonally or in a straight line. So this queen could move here, and now it is attacking the king, and this is called check, which I will probably go over this in the day 2 video. I will talk about how to actually win a chess game by checkmate. So here the king is under attack. And in chess, whenever the king is under attack, it has to either capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run away from the attacker. So let's say here white's queen blocks, and then black just decides to capture because the queen can move as far as it wants until it is blocked by a piece or it captures something. So the queen moves forward, and now the bishop just jumps back here diagonally, capturing, and now it's black's turn. Now, here, the game could continue on, and we could show you how to play a whole game of chess, but I'm going to go back to the beginning here and just break down how the pieces move. So let me set up a different position here. All right, so just to show you how the pawns move. On their first move, they can move 1 square forward. So let me, excuse me here. All right, pawns move 1 square forward like this, or they can move 2 squares forward. So, once again, 1 square or 2. So if we continued on, let's say white now pushes this pawn 2 squares forward. Now we see that the pawns are attacking each other because pawns attack diagonally. So black could capture and white could recapture here. All right, so that takes care of how the pawns move. So now let's look at the bishops. So bishops move in a diagonal line. So here white could move, well actually since white just captured, it's black's turn now. So black could develop his bishop to here, moving diagonally, and then in the future the bishop could continue moving diagonally, but it cannot go this way because its own pawn is blocking it. So just remember, bishops move diagonally until they come in contact with a piece, capturing an enemy piece or blocked by their own pieces. Here this pawn restricts the bishop from moving further. All right, so the knights move in the L shape. So up here, 2 squares, 1 over, or 1 square forward, 1 square diagonally, but they move in an L shape. So let's say white didn't want to move up here, they could move here. Just remember that knights begin on one colored square and move to the opposite colored square. So this square is on a dark square, and he can move forward to a light square. So this knight here is on a light square, and he moves forward to a dark square. All right, so now we know how the bishops move, the knights move. We can take another look at the rooks. So let's say, once again, black decides to push a pawn forward here. And generally, that's not the best move to move these pawns on the side, but it gives his rook room to move. So, white instead decides to move another bishop. And then now this rook can move up here, but white can move his rook over here. So they can move forward, backwards, left, or right as far as they want until they either capture a piece or are blocked by a piece. So here, the white rook could only move to c1, and the queen is blocking its path. And then if it goes forward, the knight would be blocking its path, but it could move to c2 if it wants to. So just remember, bishops move diagonally. Whatever color square the bishop starts out on, it will always stay on those colored squares. Rooks move forward, backwards, left, or right, always in straight lines. And the knights move in an L shape, starting on one color and landing on the opposite color. So black could go ahead and move his bishop here. Now the queens. The queens are a combination of the bishop and rook. So the queen can move out in this diagonal direction here. Let's say the queen moves here. Black could move its queen in a straight line, forward one. And the same thing. The queen moves diagonally or in a straight line, forward, backwards, left, or right, until it is blocked by a piece or it captures a piece. So now the kings. How do the kings move? Well, they can move one square in any direction. So the king could move up here, but it's white's turn. So let's say the king moves here for white, black moves up here. But the king is kind of like the queen in that it can move in a straight line or diagonally, except it can only move one square, left, right, up, down, or diagonally. All right, so if we go back to the beginning, just remember, as a review, setting up the board, make sure that the light square is on the bottom right. So light on the right on both sides of the board. When your opponent is looking at it, his square will be on the right hand side. And of course yours will be on the bottom right hand as well. And ensure that the letters and numbers begin for white with A1 in the bottom left corner, then B1, C1, all the way up to H1 here. And then A1 in the corner. And if we go up the file here from A1 up to A8. So vertically up and down are files, like a filing cabinet. And then horizontal left and right are ranks, kind of like the ranks on a military member's sleeve. So just remember, ranks horizontally, files vertically like a filing cabinet. Make sure the light square is in the bottom right and the A1 square is in the bottom left on the white side of the board. If we flip the board, now we see that the white square is on the right, but now it is H8. H8 square is in the bottom left. And the A8 square is in the bottom right for black. And this is just so that the annotation with these letters and numbers on the board here are in the correct position when later you will want to write down your chess moves if you play in a tournament, or you can write down your moves so you can go back over your games and see what you did right or wrong. All right. We'll just flip the board back to white's perspective. So when you set up the pieces, the second row will have all your pawns. Then the same for black. The second rank will have all his pawns lined up. Rooks in the corners, then the knights beside them, then the bishops. And then in the center, just remember queen on her color or her dress matches her shoes, because you want the light colored queen on the light squares and the dark colored queen on the dark squares, and the king placed beside her. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this day one video, where I will try and help take the guesswork out of how to learn chess. We'll start with a complete beginner learning how to set up the board today and how to move the pieces. And then we'll slowly progress and learn more and more about this wonderful game of chess. So hopefully this series, Chess Beginner to Winner, will help you learn all you need to possibly play in chess tournaments in the future and maybe even win some. All right, well, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments or suggestions or any requests on what you would like to see in future chess videos. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.